My question is about basically the corporate money in politics and how Congress and the Senate and everybody in government is not working for the people, they're working for the corporations. Now you've got all these different initiatives out there trying to improve things. Is there anything to get that money out of politics? Is there any hope? Or is it going to have to come from the bottom up?
I mean, I'm always an indomitable optimist. I believe there's always hope. Humans collectively create systems, and then the systems shape us, but we also create them, and we can change them, collectively. And as we learn better, we can do better, and we can create better. So I absolutely have hope. And I think that change can come from anywhere. It can come from the bottom up. I think it can come from the top down. More often than not, it comes from the bottom up. There's the old saying, if the people lead, the leaders will follow. And I think that more often than not, that's how it has to roll. But we absolutely shouldn't give up on policy. I'm friends with Senator Cory Booker, who is the only vegan in the U.S. Senate. And, he's working across the aisle with Senator Tester to help create regulations around factory farms, because Senator Tester is himself a farmer in Montana, Republican, not a vegetarian by any way, shape, or form, but he cares about animals, and he's horrified by the way that the industrialized food industry is making it harder for family farms to exist or even to do the right thing when it comes to animal welfare. So they're actually trying to find points of alignment and agreement around some of those issues. And Senator Booker is a Democrat and Senator Tester is a Republican, and they're coming together. And I personally think that, all the major political leaders are heavily influenced by money. And the sad reality is that the folks who are profiting from the status quo are the ones that can invest that money to keep the status quo in place. And the biggest lobbying industry in the political world today is the pharmaceutical industry. They spend enormous sums of money trying to influence policy. And, the pharmaceutical industry does not want us to be healthy. They may say that, but at the end of the day, their business model depends on us being sick and being dependent on medications in order to live. And so, there are all kinds of ways that they use their influence to make profits. And I will say the United States, with 5% of the world's population, is responsible for 75% of global pharmaceutical industry spending. So when we talk about how much of our GDP is going to medical care or disease symptom management, huge amount of that is tied to the profits of big pharma and the way that we are hooked on drugs for our survival. And of course, I recognize that some of these medications are lifesavers, and there's no doubt we should all be grateful for whatever medicines actually help us. But we should never think that health comes from a bottle of pills. Health comes from the way we eat and live and the choices we make, and nurturing the terrain, the ecosystem that is vibrant and healthy. And occasionally, when something breaks down, a medicine may be a benefit, but that should be the last resort, not the first line of defense against sickness. And so back to a policy level, we need policies that recognize this, that focus on supporting human health and nutrition in the communities that need it most. And, we all have a stake in this, like the notion that, for example, trying to uplift the health of low-income communities is something that only affects the poor is ridiculous. If somebody is sick, they're going to be a drain on society. They're more likely to end up in crime situations. They're more likely to end up in prison. They're more likely to cause problems for other people. They're more likely to depend on government handouts later in life for their survival because they're sick, because they couldn't get ahead in life, because they couldn't have the mental clarity to succeed in the workplace, because they didn't have the energy to keep going, and they had to spend time being dependent on the care of others. So when we are able to empower people to make healthy and life-giving choices by giving them the nutrients they need to thrive, they become givers rather than takers. And what's the impact of that on a whole society, on a broad systemic level? I don't know anybody who wants to be just a taker. Most people in their heart of hearts would rather give. They'd rather contribute if they can, but a lot of people are suffering and hurting. And a lot of that comes back to food. And statistically, in the US today, the poorer you are, the darker your skin color, the more likely you are to base your diet and to be depend for your diet on foods that fuel chronic illness, and the more likely you are to suffer from chronic disease. When you're suffering from chronic disease, you have less energy, less vitality, less capacity, less go-get-em energy, less ability to make wise and healthy choices. So it's easy to blame folks for the cycles they get caught in. But as a society, unless we focus on uplifting the health and the wellness of the populations that need it the most, unless we stop subsidizing junk food and start supporting people at the most basic level and having the basic foundations of health met, we're going to continue to suffer like this. And there's going to continue to be some people who are fundamentally left out or leave themselves out because of the choices that they make when their brain isn't at its best. So I think this is all connected. And my vision is we need policies that support health and invest in health rather than subsidizing junk food and then doing big favors to big pharma so that people stay stuck in a cycle of misery. Looks like that might be all of our questions for this moment. So let me just keep going a little bit. People can raise their hands again if they want to ask more.
That would be great. Thank you, Ocean.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I actually want to get a little bit, well, first I'll touch on the broader political dimension with one more lens that I think is important. Then I want to get a little personal again. So the broad thing is, I want to say that I think that food 1.0 is about survival. If you can get enough calories to fill your belly, that is success. And for most of human history, that's been the central goal of food and the food system has been to survive. And for many people in the world, that's still the biggest goal of food, just survival, you know. But when you get food 1.0 covered, then we move to food 2.0. And that central organizing principle of food 2.0 is commerce. It's the buying and selling of goods. And it's brought us a huge range of flavor and taste and texture and cuisine, you know, from all over the world for remarkably low prices. Even though food prices are skyrocketing, we still spend less of our total income on food than humans ever did historically. And so we've gotten a little bit spoiled, if you will, to have supermarkets with gazillions of different kinds of options right there. And the prices are still on the low end of our GDP compared to, for example, medical care. But that's what food 2.0 has brought us. And, you know, it's tasty and it's made the consumer the king, if you will. Unfortunately, food 2.0 is morally bankrupt. And it's killing us. It's killing our bodies and it's killing our planet and it's torturing animals, which is why I think we need to move to food 3.0, where the central organizing principle of our food system is health for us and health for our world. And there are plenty of healthy profits to be made in food 3.0. It's just that they come from healthy food. And so that to me is a central organizing principle in our food revolution. Now, a lot of us might be wondering, how do we influence people? You know, you probably have people who don't eat as healthfully as you do, or as you wish they did. You probably know some people you wish you could share this with, but maybe they won't listen to you. So how do you influence folks? Well, to get into that, I'm going to tell a little story and then I'll circle it back. So this is super personal. I'm a dad, as I mentioned earlier. I have twin sons, Bodhi and River, and they were born prematurely, 9 weeks early, and they're on the autism spectrum. And so, you know, early on, we didn't know if they'd ever talk. We didn't know if they'd ever walk. Thank goodness they did. They're miracles. They have to work extra hard to do things other people take for granted. And they're amazing. They're in a college class right now and graduated high school with honors. And they're amazing kids. I just love my kids so much with all my heart. And our son River also had a really rough start. And in his first 10 years, he never made eye contact with me. We never had that experience of just dropping in and looking in each other's eyes and feeling connected. And I'd given up. I thought that would never happen. But then we discovered a program called Sunrise, SONRISE, which focuses on a kind of autism treatment where instead of training kids to behave differently, instead, he focused on building connection with them, building relationship with them, including building eye contact with them. So one day I'm spending some time with my son River, and he's chewing on a Barbie doll's foot, which was one of his passions at the time. He's 10 years old and he's chewing on a Barbie foot and totally oblivious to me, it seemed. And instead of worrying, oh my God, this plastic's probably made in China, what toxins are leaching into his bloodstream, or how is my kid ever going to have a dating life if he chews on Barbie feet all day long? Instead, and yanking it out of his mouth and being like, hey kid, this is our time together. Pay attention. I'm here. You know, instead, I decided to join him. So I'm sitting across the room from him and I pick up another Barbie and I start chewing on her foot, just like he is. And I'm getting into it. And at that moment, River looks at me, and this huge grin comes over his face. And I could almost hear him thinking, oh my God, there is intelligent life on this planet. he's like, wow, he gets it. And he's looking at me, and we're chewing on Barbie feet, and we're beaming in each other's eyes. First moment of eye contact with my son in his life. And we're beaming in each other's eyes, chewing on Barbie feet for what felt like an eternity. And then he gestures like this. Turns out his Barbie has 2 feet. He's inviting me to come chew on the other foot of his Barbie. So now I come over, and we're 3 inches apart, still just completely locked, beaming in each other's eyes. I've got a tear rolling down my cheek, and we're chewing on Barbie feet. And it's the moment of like first contact with my kid, in his life. And it was so profound. That moment has been repeated in other forms since. She doesn't chew on Barbie feet anymore, but we still have moments when, a song comes on, or he tells a joke, or we have a connection, and we look in each other's eyes. And there's this moment of just beaming connection, soul to soul, beyond autism, beyond even parent-child. We're just 2 beings looking at each other, feeling kinship and connection. And here's the thing. What does all this have to do with influencing other people? Well, quite a bit, actually. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, you have no moral authority with those who can feel your underlying contempt. When we judge people, when we pathologize them, we lose moral standing in the relationship. And when that happens, we lose connection with them as well. People know when you respect their dignity. People can tell when you understand their intrinsic motivation. And people know when you're judging them, when you're looking down on them, when you think you know better than them, when you're blaming them, when you think there's something wrong or broken about them, and that's what you're focused on. There's an old saying, though, what we appreciate appreciates. What you focus on tends to expand. When you focus on building connection, when you focus on building relationship, when you focus on unconditional love, people know that. And it's so important, if you want to influence somebody's food choices, to first recognize that unconditional love is palpable. It matters. It's real. When you know who somebody is, when you're connected with their integrity and their spirit, when you feel aligned with their basic essential goodness, they feel that. You probably have people in your life that respect you and love you, and you feel better around them. You've probably got people in life that tend to judge you, and you feel bumbly and small and kind of at your worst around them. You know the difference that I'm talking about. So we get to be that for other people. And when you're a stand for somebody's dignity or goodness, or even truth telling, knowing that they want that, knowing that that's their ground of being, is this is a human being who wants the truth, who you respect enough to tell the truth to. If that's the ground of being, then you're still in a place of fundamental right relationship with their soul. And when we're in right relation with people's soul, we have moral standing in the relationship, and we have the capacity for positive impact. However, when we lose that right relation, when we shut that down, we become capable of debasement and disrespect. And I see this honestly as one of the roots of the way humans are treating animals. When we treat them as lesser and disrespect, and we don't recognize that they're sentient beings, we become capable of torturing them in factory farms, normalizing that. And of course, the result is it comes back to us in the form of heart attacks and disease that sickens us. Similarly, when we disrespect other human beings, we become capable of war and violence. Well, the same is true on a micro level when you disrespect somebody on a basic level by not honoring the integrity of who they are. And so when it comes to food choices, I always want to remember that people deserve to be the author of their own lives and their own choices. And I never want to try to rob that from them and think I know better than them, even if I do think I know better than them. And you know what? I often do think I know better than them, right? I do. I probably do know better than them. I've spent decades in this, right? They probably haven't. But at the same time, I don't know better than them what they've been through. I don't know better than them what makes them tick. I don't know better than them what their intrinsic motivations are, or what drives them, what moves them, what inspires them, what they long for, what they were born for, what their purpose in life is. I don't know that better than them. And so I want to be in respect for that. I want to be in partnership with that. And then I want to find the door in, hopefully, that will work. So tactically speaking, you may want to give people books. You may want to give them films. You may want to give them courses or online resources. Tell them about the Food Revolution Summit. Tell them about this program right here. Let them know about it. It's often easier to have an expert tell them than to try to tell them yourself, because people don't necessarily listen to their friends or family, but they may listen to an expert. Little trick Dr. Neil Barnard gave me that I still use. If you're giving somebody a book, slap a Post-it note on there that says, I thought of you on page 176 or 215 or whatever it is, some spot that made you think of them that you think they might especially connect with. And I'll bet you they're going to open at least to that page. They'll be curious what made you think of them. Same thing with a film. Tell them, hey, I thought of you at 1 hour and 17 minutes in, or 27 minutes in, or whatever it is, some spot that you felt especially landed or connected. They may or may not watch the whole thing, but the odds go up dramatically of them engaging when you pinpoint some spot that felt relevant, and you can also invite people to talk about it afterwards. You can also host potlucks, share food with people, healthy, wholesome food. Sometimes they say the best doorway to a person's heart is their stomach, right? So give people healthy food that's nourishing and tastes good, and they'll be amazed. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this tastes good. There's no beef in that. It tastes really good. So find the doorways in and recognize that for somebody who's used to a super standard American diet, you may have to choose something that isn't super pure. Maybe use some beyond meat in there, or some other thing that maybe if you're a super pure foodist, you wouldn't normally eat, but maybe you want to bring it in just to be a bridge to help make it a little more familiar to people so they can test it out and find something they like. I don't give people, pure broccoli juice for their first healthy meal necessarily, so find the ways to sweeten it up. Spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. And then also introduce healthy food step by step. But sharing yummy, healthy foods with people is a great step. And then if you want support for yourself, get a potluck thing growing. Connect with other people and say, everyone, let's bring something delicious and healthy together, or even a meal sharing program. You can do cooperatives where people at work, like, I'll bring food on Monday for the three of us, you bring it on Tuesday. Here's the thing, folks, it's always faster to make twice as much on a per calorie basis. It doesn't take twice as long to make twice as much food. So when you cook in quantity, you're able to pay it forward for the rest of your week, so you have leftovers, and you also can share with other people, which can build social connection. And then if they do the same, then that'll save you time as well. So sharing, connecting, letting food be a doorway for building relationships is a powerful stepping stone you can take. And then, also just remember to always love people. They'll have their own timing and their own rhythm. I have friends that still continue to eat, junk food quite a bit, even though I've told them all kinds of things about it. But every so often something gets in and they try something a little different. And I just want to say, I love you no matter what you eat. I really do. What matters most is that we have love in our hearts, that we have connection. And on top of that, I want you healthy and alive long term. And I'm really happy to see you making choices that might support that.